I'm so honored to be here with you. I'm so honored to be here with you. And I have a confession to make. My name is Kate Roger, and I am a modern-day priestess. Notice I didn't say, "Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned," before I began that confession. I am a modern-day priestess. Not a priest, no. No, at age 14, Father Hall guaranteed that I'd not ever in this lifetime ever have the great privilege to serve in the holy rites of priesthood. From years of attending Catholic schools, prayers every morning, sacramental rites of passage, catechism, and delivering readings at the 11 a.m. Mass every Sunday from age 12 to 17, my spiritual life was informed by my ancestors and was very alive, very real, and very deep for me. But what were those roots of my ancestors? Actually, how far did Catholicism go back in my lineage? With a bit of research, I unearthed an ancestral line of peasants, gardeners, metal workers, druids, with a smidge of Native American thrown in for good luck. The epigenetic influence of the Vatican was relatively new in my pedigree, so what did that mean for me? As a kid, I remember running naked through the woods and swimming in the creek, playing with the nature spirits, the Davis, my friends of the forest, behind our house in Kentucky in our backyard. There must have been something else operating in me, something that wasn't quite Catholic, something more primal, more magically mystic. As I look back at it now, it was the waking of a priestess. But what does that mean? Growing up in suburban Kentucky and then East Texas, I had no frame of reference for the yearnings of my soul. Try as I might, I kept stuffing my round peg into a very square hole, and it just didn't fit. I was the kid who investigated all things Christ. I held Bible studies every Thursday, was a reporter for Christian Student Union, and an officer in the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. Heck, I was even a member of the Young Republicans, well on my way in a preordained path of social contribution. But no, there was just this something that said, no, you're barking up the wrong tree. It was the call of a priestess. It was seared in my soul. And while I totally dug the teachings of Christ the mystic for real, I kept wondering, who was this Magdalene and what was she really up to? What were frankincense and myrrh oils used for? And what occurred in that moment when she washed his feet? Why was it she that was with him when he breathed his last breath? And what alchemy did she witness in his ascension? And his mama? Where did she take her son in all those years not spoken about in the official texts? What were they up to? What magic was being conjured? I dove into any text I could find on the cultures of the time of pre-patriarchy Judea and Samaria, the practices and beliefs of nearby lands. This was pre-World Wide Web, by the way. What I found in my parsed together research was a mysticism of India, Asia, Kemet. The oracles of Africa and Greece had mystical influence. And yes, you guessed it, the ancient mystery schools of Celts. So finally, I was beginning to connect my dots to find a more true identity. I dove deeper into mystic investigations because that's where my soul led me, and there I found treasure chests filled with information on pre-patriarchy goddess worship. cloisters where women lived and studied together, temples dedicated not only to the Great Mother. These ancient goddess complexes were healing and birthing centers, schools for training and mystical practices, meccas for seasonal celebrations and spiritual ceremony, all of which pretty much came with at least one altar to the goddess, essentially the feminine energetic. The subterranean context was an honoring of the divine femme. All right, so let's breathe with that, because today we're hearing so much about the rise of the feminine. Famished for sacred context in the tapestry of my life, I turned to women like Kate Bush, Frida Kahlo, Clarissa Pinkola Estes, Alice Walker, and even Marion Zimmer Bradley, who penned The Mists of Avalon. I began to find my sacred and honor my inner priestess in the delicious dive and personal cultivation of mind-blowing and even, yes, risky exploration and expression. Through all the years and decades of intersectional exploration and psycho-spiritual archaeological digs, I finally landed in a context that allowed me to explore the musings of my soul, but I did it all in secret. Cloaked in somewhat acceptable avenues provided by the matrix of the world, I still had no language and no way, really, to articulate my brand of spirituality. Enter Agape, a New Thought Ancient Wisdom Spiritual Center in Los Angeles. Enter teachers and teachings anchored in rigorous study, disciplined practices, and immutable scientific truths with an understanding of an operating system of the mystic. I really hit jackpot. In New Thought, I found ways and means to contextualize, to contemporize, to utilize, and to validate all that had compelled me in my closeted walk as a priestess. You see, as a contemporary priestess, I had never related to the doctrines of goddess groups or Wiccan covens that I had crossed paths with. And though drawn to particular facets and tenets of these lineages, they too were even a bit dogmatic for me. They felt exclusive, and in an odd way, they felt influenced by the hierarchical patriarchy, which seemed antithetical to their very reason for existing. Bottom line, I'm not drawn to human-made systems of spiritual protocol. I tend to be more interested in that which is inspired and expansive, cosmic, and changeless. That's why I'm here, standing here right now. That's why I'm drawn to metaphysics. So, what does all of this have to do with the walk of a modern-day priestess? Well, for me, because that's what I consider myself to be, the veritable truth, principles, and laws of an operating system of the whole shebang, pun intended, these laws lend themselves to be more indicative of an ancient priestess lineage than any other path I've found. In my years of research and exploration and all my dives into various experiences, New Thought Ageless Wisdom affords me, as a contemporary priestess, powerful tools, technologies, perspective, and language to facilitate with insight, conviction, compassion, and demonstration as no other expression of priestess I've encountered. For me, there are three basic yearnings that reside in the heart and soul of priestess. They are, 1, an unstoppable, compelling urge to serve, to contribute. In this vein, could we call the path of a Catholic nun a path of a priestess? Absolutely. Though within the patriarchy, she's never allowed to be the great mother. And this is blasphemous in respect to the divine feminine. The feminine principle is the great creatrix. It's from her that all of life is birthed. How can we treasure this radiant verity of life if the dominant paradigm rejects her sacrosanct existence? Yes, Mother Teresa, yes. Service, contribution, yes. Priestess, yes. And there's a white elephant in the matrix. We didn't necessarily come here to be chaste. And we, the greater collective of us priestesses, certainly didn't come here to be martyrs. Ask Joan of Arc. Though she be sainted, I'm sure she'd tell us a very different story about her life and then what she stood for than the stories ordained by his historians. So did Mother Teresa, Joan of Arc, the Magdalene, and so many other unnamed others. Do they exemplify service and contribution and the legacy of a priestess? Holy yes, they absolutely do. Of course they do. And the story of their catalytic walks in the world has been shaped to fit a masculinized paradigm. These priestesses were elevated and put on a pedestal, earned a place of sanctity, piety, and awe within the context of a world that can finally then allow for their magnificence, for their very existence. The path of a modern-day priestess doesn't have to be out loud or pedestaled or sainted. Her life doesn't have to look exceptional or qualify for some kind of recognition or award. It can look like anything, like picking up the pen that somebody drops in line while you're at the post office. It can look like morning prayers and communing with the infinite. It can look like scrubbing floors or driving a taxi in New York City. It can look like social justice, or answering the phone on some customer service team away in a far away land. It can look like a mama raising her children and her daughter escorting that mama when she sheds this mortal coil. Serving the immutable truth of our oneness can look like anything. That's for the heart and soul of the individual priestess to determine, and not for any lineage or doctrine or dogma to assess. Which brings us to the second yearning I've seen in the souls of contemporary priestesses, and that yearning is an authentic commitment to right relationship. We keep hearing this catchphrase, right relationship, so much these days, and that's a very good thing. The basic idea of right relating is at the core of every wisdom tradition throughout time. It's even written in the codes of alternate space-time continuums, for all of existence is mathematically based, and in mathematics there is relationship. Love your neighbor as yourself. That's a biggie, and I'm not going to get into any kind of teaching on that. Otherwise, we'd be here for a few days, though. Let's break it down scientifically, shall we? The mathematical genius Nikola Tesla said, everything is sound. So, if everything is sound, if everything is resonance, everything is vibration, and when we ripple the unified field with any kind of frequency, our thoughts, our sounds, our movements, we directly impact every seemingly other thing in and throughout the entire cosmos. We're always in relationship. All of life is a great symphony, and we, as humans, have the quixotic and amazing opportunity to consciously and artistically imprint our harmonics throughout all of existence. A priestess understands this. In the mystical roots of her essence, she gets her catalytic ability to shift reality with a blink of an eye by right of her consciousness, backed by frequency. Our neighbor is ourself is our neighbor, whether it's within the immediacy of our own selves or with what we call an other. We magnify our sense of self and our understandings of the cosmos via the alchemical distillation that is relationship. In relationship, we have an immediate feedback system of coherence and non-coherence. Is this life-giving or is this life-choking? We're wired with the ability to directly experience energetic resonance in order to recognize coherence. It has nothing to do with personality or circumstance. It has everything to do with the symphonics of energy waves. Once a priestess strengthens this faculty, she's able to not only navigate her own life on behalf of love absolute, she's able to magnify the vitalizing truth principles on behalf of love, knowing itself through and as all. 3, modern-day priestesses crucially understand that all of life is sacred, that every moment is mystical, and that every single thing, seen and unseen, has consciousness. Some would say, hold your horses, Priestess Kate. How can you say that all of life is sacred when there are such evils in the world, when there are mass murderers and pickpockets and narcissists? When so many people barely scrape by while the 1% gloats all the way to the bank and then to Bora Bora. How on God's green earth can you say that? These people aren't sacred. Disease isn't sacred. Exclusion and oppressive hierarchy isn't sacred. And I would say to them, you're right. You are absolutely right. I agree. And then I would also say, my gosh, what is the lens we are looking through? For if we're captivated in the myopic viewpoint of the samsaric world, indeed, I agree. These abominations of life are nowhere near sacred. Though if we release the grip of this focalized subscription and step back to behold the metamorphic verity of life, that life is ever unfolding itself through and as all, it's pretty simple to see the particular ingredient in the human experience whereby we consistently forget our divinity. What do I mean by that? We all forget. There's not a human alive ever anywhere who has not forgotten. Humans forget who and what it is that we actually are. It's part and parcel of human. We forget that we're made in the image and likeness of. We forget that we're expressions, experiences of the infinite inserted into time and space here and now. We forget that we're expressions. We even forget that in the experience of human, we've opted in order to forget, and then to remember, and then to amplify that remembrance via the direct poetry of our very lives, every day, with every breath, every heartbeat. It's the mechanism of forgetting that elicits the constrictions, the shadows, which shape the light. So that then, in the mathematical spiraling of our lives, we circle back round and we remember so that we might open up those constrictions and shine the light emphasized by those shadows. A modern-day priestess understands the great artistry of forgetting and then of remembering. She understands the human conundrum and the sacred spiral. She gets that we never arrive. We never complete. That there's a sanctified syncopation of shadow and light, of constriction and expansion that is at once bizarre and fantastically unique. Never before and never again, and absolutely on purpose. And she utilizes these functionalities and this consciousness daily, no matter what the phenomena. Every day becomes sacred. Every moment, every word, an uttered prayer This is the walk of a modern-day priestess, a modern-day shiro, exploring and birthing new possibilities of artistry and right relating, establishing evolutionary and sometimes simple avenues of participation and inclusivity in service to love, in service to living truth, in service to the magic and the mystery of the one matrix. My name is Kate Roger, and I am a modern-day priestess. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.